The Pennyworth Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. Episode 4, Lady Penelope.
Should we drink that? She could have put knockout drops in it or something.
Poison the tea? Never. The Raven Society might be a bad lot, but they're not bloody Italians. I expect her boss will phone his boss, and then they'll send a few gunmen to fetch us.
A few?
Well, we only need one.
Welcome back, governors, to this episode of Pennyworth, Lady Penelope. So, should I say welcome back, chauffeurs or drivers of that esteemed pink vehicle from the Thunderbirds? Mm-hmm. Yes, we are on our 4th episode review of Pennyworth on the Pennyworth Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. Really good episode. I am one of your hosts, John.
You forgot what you were supposed to say there, didn't you?
Yes.
And I'm one of your hosts, Derek. I kind of forgot what I was about to say there as well. I've just been resisting the urge to do an impression of Parker from Thunderbirds, because I kind of think the Lady Penelope relationship with Parker, her chauffeur, is what this whole name came from for this episode, because we have Martha Kane with her chauffeur, Alfred, who future chauffeur will say.
Yes, my lady.
That's pretty close. That's pretty good. I didn't see the two of them tangling up their threads on Thunderbirds.
Yeah, so no tongue action in Thunderbirds
None of that.
At all. No. Yes. Should be ashamed of yourself, Alfred. But we are on our 4th episode of Pennyworth so far, and thanks to all of you who have come over and subscribed to us on the podcast. Mm-hmm. It's really good to have you on board. Great to get the feedback through it as well. And again, just another shout out. Please subscribe, share the podcast, share the love. You can do that through tvpodcastindustries.com, mm-hmm. where you can join any straight-laced or groovy podcast catchers of your choice. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, whichever you want to do. Yes.
Yeah.
And for feedback, we have a whole range of different ways you can get in touch. You can send us email, feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Mm-hmm. We have our voicemail tab on the right-hand side of the screen when you head on over to our website over at tvpodcastindustries.com. And, of course, we have our Facebook group and Facebook page as well.
Yes.
Just head on over to Facebook and search TV Podcast Industries.
Mm-hmm. You can go to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries now. And this is the 2nd episode we're recording this week. And I'll tell you, it will settle down. I promise it will. I know it will. For all of our fellow governors out there, it will settle down. But I've been getting so many more messages about, is there another episode coming out today? Than actually people asking about the episodes or telling their feedback about the episodes. Everybody seems to be really confused about when episodes air for this show, partly because Epix was trying to reward people who subscribed to the channel early, so they gave them 3 episodes early, and then they were trying to reward people that didn't subscribe early but give them an extra episode, which is why we have episode 4, the episode we're recording right now, the 2nd episode we're recording this week. But I'm assured from now on, every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Epix channel, you will have a brand new episode of Pennyworth, 5 through to 10, one a week, every week from now on. So it'll settle down. Everybody can just relax in front of the telly, watch the episode.
Finally, a rhythm has come to the scheduling.
We love the rhythm.
Yes, rhythm is good. Uh-huh. It allows you to digest and then go on to the next. Chit-chat about it for the remainder of the week and then come to the next episode wondering, did they get it right? Did they get it wrong? Is my theory correct? What's going on here? Really great now that they've settled into a rhythm for sure.
Absolutely, and obviously I have no problem with streaming shows and all that kind of stuff. They can do it whatever way they want to when they release these episodes. I just think the idea of doing one episode a week, great. The idea of doing every episode of the show released on one day, that's absolutely fine as well. But I think everybody was getting confused because 3 episodes came out first on the app, then 2 episodes on the TV channel, then an episode released once a week from now on. It's very confusing for a lot of people, and that's why I've been getting the questions. I think I might have set our tag wrongly because some people think we actually work for Epix as well.
No, we don't. No. And dare I say it, getting back to old school, which in itself is old school. Yes.
Absolutely. But speaking of old school, let's get back to our discussion about this episode of Pennyworth.
Yes, Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Well, the episode was directed by China Moo-young, a UK director. She worked with all of the big UK channels when she was working in the UK. I love this because a lot of people think we only have BBC over in the UK and Ireland. We have loads of channels over here. She started out working on The Misfits for E4. Then she went over to Secret Diary of a Call Girl for ITV. Then she did Call the Midwife and 13 for BBC. And then she worked on Humans for Channel 4, which was a co-production with an American programming channel called AMC, who you might know from The Walking Dead. So she worked at that co-production there in Humans, and then she started working in the US. So you can kind of see how her path progressed to working in the US. In the last 3 years, she's actually directed a couple of episodes of a show called Harlots for Hulu, and 3 episodes of The Rook for Starz, and now she's on Pennyworth, so for Epic. So moved around to a lot of the US streaming services and streaming sites. So that's kind of cool as well. So nice path.
Yeah, interesting path, absolutely, with Humans and with Misfits.
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
path.
All the way up through to The Rook on Starz as well, which is pretty cool. Great job there, China Moo-young. The episode was written by Bruno Heller. I'm going to keep saying it every episode because I have a feeling at some point he's not going to write an episode. But right now he's written the first 5 episodes of the show. We know that for a fact. So really cool to have him still on board, showing his vision for the show. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for this episode?
Sure. The noseless Lord Harwood, bruised, battered and broken, scrounges the streets of London after his run-in with the barber, but is adopted by an artful dodger. Meanwhile, still afraid of the big bad bet, Sykes, Esme shacks up with Alfred's parents to stay safe as Alfred and his new employer, Martha Kane, take a train ride into the countryside. Up north, a restless Bet Sykes has had enough of her sister's clientele and candlesticks and heads back to London to return from the dead and reunite with Esme. On assignment, Alfred and Martha have a run-in with the unfriendly villagers and maypole dancers of Bourton Wassett, who try and stop them from discovering the identity of the new leader of the Raven Society, who turns out to be masquerading as a doctor at the local hospital. Having obtained their intel, Alfred and Martha head back to London, where they exchange a kiss, and further tragedy strikes for Alfred at his and Esme's new home.
There are some massive moments in this episode, obviously, as you can tell from the synopsis. We're not going to go into all of them straight away. The way we've been talking about our podcast is because the show is set back in the 60s. There's lots of questions about the past of Alfred, so we're going through our top 5 questions about the episode. Things that popped up, answers we have by the end of the episode, and some that we don't, some that'll be answered hopefully in the future. My first question for you, John, possibly you might know the answer to this before we get into our top 5 questions. Is there a town called Bourton Wassett in the UK?
I have no idea.
I don't either. I have no idea at all. It might be one of these tiny little villages that existed for 6 months and then got incorporated into a bigger town. I have no idea.
The only reason I say that village as well is because on the hospital, where the Raven Society leader was masquerading as a doctor, it says such and such hospital, Bourton Wassett.
Very good. Okay.
And maybe it's Barton Wassett. Or whatever, I don't know, but so that's why we have Bourton Wassett.
Excellent. Good pair of eyes on you there, John.
Absolutely. Sharp as an eagle.
Exactly. Let's get into some of the discussions about our American Eagles in the show. Nice one. Question number 1. Did Martha Kane know Thomas Wayne before this episode? It's a big question because Alfred actually specifically called it out in episode 3. Do you know a guy called Thomas Wayne? And she said no. I think at the beginning of this, we get that answer that it is no. She doesn't know Thomas Wayne personally, is kind of how she answered that question. But she may have been aware of his name. What do you think, John?
Yeah, it's a difficult one to know, isn't it? Because if they are spies, then, they have that whole charade of that conversation, that specific conversation, so that they can authenticate each other's identity.
Yes.
So she may have been aware that her boss was coming, but had never met him because he's kept anonymous. So this could have been actually the first time that she had met him and sort of spoken with him directly, even though he could have been giving her orders and assignments all the way back for however long. So I would say that she probably didn't, but it did kind of raise an eyebrow to think, maybe she did, and maybe she was lying because it was simply to get Alfred on board.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think she probably wasn't lying. I think she didn't know him, and this is the first meeting, because we do have that really interesting conversation where, they're asking about where they come from in the US. And we have Thomas saying Gotham. And she's kind of like going, is it true? All those kind of scare stories. And he goes, Gotham will be the Zurich of the Eastern Seaboard. So interesting stuff.
Showing his love for Switzerland, as we know from Gotham.
Exactly.
Thomas Wayne has got a cabin in Switzerland that is regularly visited by Alfred and Bruce over the years. So showing his little love for the safety of Switzerland in his proclamation that Gotham will be like Zurich in 2 decades.
But I suspect his aspirations for Gotham will be dashed on the rocks of reality in the near future. For sure.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, it won't become the Zurich of the Eastern Seaboard. It will probably become the kind of slum city of the Eastern Seaboard.
Well, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's nowhere like Gotham, I think.
Or the differential between rich and poor of the Eastern Seaboard. So it'll be like the city of London.
Maybe. I don't know about that now, John. But since we live in Switzerland, since we're only about an hour away from Zurich, we know that Zurich is a very safe, very quiet kind of town. So I can't imagine...
It's not a town, it's a city.
It's a city, that's right, but it feels like a little town.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine Gotham ever attaining that status, though. But I do like the traditional optimism of Thomas Wayne appearing in this show. He's a philanthropist in the past, in the comics. The little bits we know about him is that he is a person that does care about the public and cares about fixing things by using his powers to do so. He's kind of a champion for the underdog. So the idea that he would think that Gotham's going to fall off a cliff into darkness, that probably would go against what we do know about him.
Yeah, I mean, they have a really kind of interesting conversation as well here. I think one of the ones that struck me was just how he gives her a gun, he gives all the stuff that she needs for this new assignment, which is to find out who the new leader of the Raven Society is, now that Lord Harwood has kind of gone to ground and had his nose chopped off and is now sort of begging for doggy treats in the back alleys of London with his new Artful Dodger. Kind of, I don't know, chaperone or something like that, So he gives her a gun, and I think the interesting thing that we find here is that the No Name League thinks that Alfred is worth the investment in the money. And
very interesting.
It really is. And to some extent, maybe that suggests that Thomas, at this moment in time, doesn't. I mean, who knows that he's just following the orders of his boss, who is the leader of the No Name League.
Okay.
Maybe that's the case, but certainly the way Thomas approaches it with Martha, who's concerned that she's just been given a gun and her deal with Alfred is no guns. He goes, "We'll just pay him extra. The League thinks he's worth it." So that's kind of interesting. Is it just the League, or does Thomas still got? He's kind of neutral about it, really, because I think that's the thing, that at the moment the main interaction here is with Martha, but I like this kind of idea of the relationship not being that immediate, that it takes time to digest and evolve, and actually may come through Martha.
Absolutely, yeah, with Alfred, absolutely, yeah. Because this is the first time we've heard for definite that Thomas works for the No Name League. We didn't get that confirmation in the first couple of episodes. We know he was trying to recruit Alfred to this organisation, but never said what the organisation was. We found out last episode that Martha works with the No Name League, and now we find out here that he is also in the No Name League. So they're both on the same side, effectively, trying to battle against the Raven Society by finding out who their leader is. So we're getting a lot of information between them. I love the conversation between the two of them where Thomas is trying to work out why a woman such as Martha Kane would join the No Name League, and she just kind of goes, or he says it's a calling. He agrees with everything that they stand for, and she kind of says, well, I get bored easily. And then a little bit later on, when Alfred asks her why she's involved, she says it's a long story. One of a couple of times she says it's a long story, so she doesn't have to explain herself. So there's, once again, she does feel like that traditional spy, I suppose, who's not willing to give up any information to anybody. The tight-lipped kind of spy. I think that's kind of cool. So
yeah, I mean, but she does give some information up to Alfred as well, and obviously what we will come to a bit later is maybe, at least with Alfred, she is putting down those barriers a bit. And actually with Thomas at the moment, it is purely working relationship rather than a romance. and a connection in that sense.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, just quickly coming back on the No Name League, I'm glad they said the name of that society again, because I always thought it was the No Name Society.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when Thomas did say the League think he is, I immediately thought of the League of Shadows, and I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? But
is Ra's al Ghul going to arrive suddenly? And
so I'm glad that it kind of got clarified, really.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a couple of things they've done in the show in the last couple of episodes where you're going, I know you're writing all the scripts, Bruno Heller, so you have it in your head exactly who these characters belong and what box they all belong in, but you may need a character to be on screen just to go, what we're talking about here is the No Name League, because we hear the League and we think of something completely different from DC Comics. One of the couple of things that I just, one or two other little tiny things to pull out here. He says he's from Gotham, and she indicates that she went to Duke University. Duke University is in North Carolina. There's a couple of Air Force bases around the area and a couple of Army bases around the area, which would kind of make sense that she would have gone to college near to Army or Air Force if her father was in the war and travelled a lot. So I like they have that little connection there, even though it's just one line from him where he says, oh, you went to Duke. Oh, okay. Go Demons, he says. And she says, no, it's Devils in Duke. So it's just a nice touch. She calls back to it later on that she is the child of a travelling soldier, effectively.
Yeah,
so
she calls him a lifer as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is something that Alfred kind of, is kind of intrigued by, because he's like, 10 years was long enough for me. And so, yeah, that's a nice little bit of intonation between these two. And I think, again, just making that distinction between maybe how Martha sees the army and soldiers because of her father, and how Alfred does with his knowledge and experience in the jungle, but also with Davy Boy and Bazza.
Exactly. And finally, the other tiny bit of information that came out here, important because we probably thought it was a bit shadier than it actually was on the show. We were wondering whether Lord Harwood is actually the leader at all, or whether he was just covering up for the leader, as all good third or fourth in commands do. He was the leader, actually, so he's been taken out and they needed a new leader in here. So we do have a new leader in this episode because he's gone. So it wasn't as shady as we thought.
No, and I'm intrigued to see what happens to him, because he is on the streets now. Which I find interesting. His kind of his power, his wealth has been completely stripped. And is this the kind of thing that breaks a man to get that? Supervillain won't be the right word, but that antagonist to Alfred, which could be really interesting. Is this, again? We've kind of said this with Bet Sykes. Is she Alfred's Joker? Is Lord Harwood Alfred's Mad Hatter or something like that? Certainly you would think he's probably going to get driven to insanity through living on the streets and being someone's pet, effectively. So it'd be interesting to see if they carry that through, or whether we're kind of finishing with Lord Harwood. I suspect not, to be honest, because it's a big actor. So I think
we'll see Jason Fleming possibly with a metal nose in future. At some point, he gets the replacement metal nose. Let's get on to question number 2, John.
Yes, who is the new leader of the Raven Society?
Yeah, I think this kind of covers the actual mission of Alfred and Martha going off to this small town. They have the contact that gets murdered at the train station, at King's Cross station, saying the last words on his dying lips of the darkness. Really cool little moment. And I love that it leads into this really weird thing when they get into the small town of all of these people that are watching on as they travel through the town. It turns out the darkness is actually the tea rooms in this little town.
The darkness tea rooms. Yes. What a fantastic thing. This whole village to me was perfect. It was Hot Fuzz crossed with Wicker Man. Just a really sense of rural darkness and weirdness. You've got the maypole, you've got the maypole dancers, you've got the darkness tea rooms, you've got all this kind of, quiet village, but people standing around watching, and it really fits into that kind of horror genre from Britain, such as The Wicker Man, and which Hot Fuzz successfully emulated as a comedy. A dark comedy at that, and it is a really great little sort of nod to that Wicker Man type horror.
Yeah.
You know, The Hills of Eyes, that kind of thing.
Well, like, you know, I'm a city boy. I'm from Dublin City, you know, and going to small towns in the UK or Ireland, there is always that moment when you get off the train and you come into a small town where everybody knows each other. Everybody's eyes are on you the minute you get off that bus or get off that train or get out of the car, because you're something brand new in the local area. Nobody knows who you are until you've identified yourself as a friend of someone from the town. You're the weird one. But to your eyes, everybody in the town is staring at you from the moment you arrive. So it has formed the basis of so many great sci-fi and fantasy and fiction novels in the UK and Ireland, definitely, particularly. And in the US, obviously, they also have that idea of the southern counties where it's a much smaller town. There's much smaller number of people. They've had tons and tons of horrors based in small towns in the US as well. So it's just that idea of being in a place where everybody knows each other, but they don't know you. So what does that mean, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But it turns out that the Darkness Tea Rooms has a gun-toting proprietor who gets shot through the chest. Mm-hmm. But I like how Alfred operates here in this town. He likes to draw attention to himself. He's trying to get noticed as well. He's trying to get captured. You know, for him, the quickest route from A to B is just to get captured, miss out the middlemen, and get to the front of the queue with the leader saying, "What are you doing?" You know, and I like that. That's kind of his modus operandi here. Is let's just get caught. Let's make a fuss. Let's stand out. Because that's how we're going to find out who the new leader of the Raven Society is. And I mean, the moment that they kind of leave the Darkness Tea Rooms, I think that chase scene is just great. I loved it. I thought it was really dynamic. The jumping over the walls. I mean, one of the guys who's chasing them before the maypole dancers come in to attack them, he does a proper run and leap over the wall. It felt really, really good, this chase scene, and I really liked it.
I know what you mean. It felt really dynamic, and again, given there's not a huge amount of gunplay and there's no big car chase going on in this scene, it shouldn't feel as dynamic as it is. It's really well filmed and really well put together as a scene. It feels really actiony in the middle of this small town in the UK. You know, I think it's really a really well done scene, and really enjoyed seeing these together. You're right, that whole thing about Alfred as well. There's a certain intelligence to a character that kind of goes, right, we're going to arrive in this town. They've already killed our contact, so they know we're coming. So all we need to do is look at the people that are looking at us and make one of them take us to their leader, because that's what they're going to do anyway. So we might as well just not play about, just go and do it, basically. So it's a certain amount of intelligence to completely read your enemy and every step they're going to go through, and just choose the steps you want to choose out of their plan to fulfill your plan. I love that he walks up to the other two people that were about to chase them, gives himself up, and eventually headbutts one of the guys in the face because he's given out to him about the woman who shot herself in the head with her own shotgun. Remember, it wasn't Alfred that did that, but he's given out too much about that, and Alfred's kind of going, look, I'm here to do business. Maybe I'll do business with you. Because he can't do business with me.
That is a great scene. It's really comedic. You know, he gets punched, and then there's kind of the sides swipe as well, and he's like, hang on a second, I'm trying to do business here, you know, and then comes in with the headbutt to knock out the guy. You know, I really think that was just genius. It was so well timed. You're kind of waiting for the woman to come in with a straight off kick to the midriff just to disable Alfred.
No, she's a much smarter businesswoman than that. So I definitely like that. Like the attack by the maypole dancers as well. I love that they attack Alfred, leaving Martha on her own, which gives her the opportunity to just pull her gun out and point at them and going, get out of here, and they both run off immediately. So I do like that they completely underestimate Martha, which is something that we heard a little bit from Alfred. I think Martha calls him, "Oh, you're a general old-fashioned sexist," to his face, which he takes as, does that mean I have sex with a lot of people? Because he doesn't have any idea what a sexist is at all, which I really like that little touch. There's a little bit of innocence in Alfred, even though he's not generally seen as an innocent character. It's because he's effectively saying women are a complete mystery to him. You know, he understands men. Men have to prove themselves and have to go out and find themselves, but women know who they are from when they're born. And Martha's kind of looking at him going, hang on a second, you know nothing, and you're an old-fashioned sexist. And that's how the whole thing plays out, and that's why it's interesting with the maypole dancers ignoring her, and she actually is the one that drives them away. So I do like that they have a little bit of power in Martha here.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I love the fact that they had maypole dancers taking out Alfred. I mean...
They are the most evil-looking maypole dancers I've ever seen.
They're proper scary. I mean, weirdly, I do remember maypole dancing in my neck of the woods growing up.
Yeah?
And up around in the north of England, in the rural areas. Because, yeah, it was one of those things. In fact, I think, someone that my brother knew did maypole dancing.
Okay.
But it was all women mainly, or girls, because it's a fertility kind of rite.
Okay.
It's done in the spring. It's all about fertility and so on. Now, I think in the UK, it was you kind of have like ribbons from the top, and you wind it round slowly until you come into the middle, and so on. But yeah, I mean, it's really, really kind of weird. I mean, it's kind of gone now, but I do remember that those kind of pagan traditions being around still when I was a kid. I think in some ways it's actually coming back, because I mean, it was like when we went for my mum's 80th birthday and we did the canal barge ride, and we were at this old market town with a castle in the Pennines in northern England, and there's a bunch of Morris
the Morris dancers,
waving their snotty hankies with the bells on their shoes and all ribbons, and someone with like a fox hat or kind of thing. So I mean, it's proper pagan.
Yes,
and it's all about fertility.
And completely confusing to tourists and people outside. So Martha's question, what's the maypole for?
What's it going on here?
You know, I totally understand the question. I'm not sure whether Alfred's answer is exactly right in our world. It might be right in this version of the DC version of the UK, that it's just a sex pole, basically. I think is pretty much how he describes it. But I think really. A dance for fertility would probably be much closer to what you'd say, right?
Yes.
What we guess, or what we're told by our parents that it was for, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, well, no, I was told it was just kind of a pagan dance.
Just some dance.
I wasn't being told it was for sex, fertility, or anything like that. I mean, it's kind of... It's an evolution of dancing around a tree in the spring to bring forth the rites of fertility or something.
Right. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then you kind of put strangers into a wicker man and burn them alive.
Well,
sacrifice
maybe
to
not.
their gods. Yay!
Maybe not, but I did like there was a touch in the episode where someone tells Alfred that they will just set him on fire on the top of one of the guys from the Raven Society says that they're going to set fire to Alfred, which is definitely a reference to the Wicker Man.
Oh, big time.
So I do like that. Let's get back to some of the other stuff that's going on in these scenes with Martha effectively gets injured in this battle going on, this chase scene that's going on. She gets injured in the leg, and Alfred kindly sends her off to the local doctor, but we find out that's the person they've been looking for the whole time. I do like that Alfred works his way up through the other men in the organisation, just going, you don't sound like the leader of this organisation, and they get somebody else. It's kind of like the I want to speak to your supervisor moment, if you've ever dealt with a customer services operation, and it's like, no, I heard you in the background of this call, so you can't be the supervisor. You're just the guy that sits next to the person I've been speaking to. I love with Alfred where he's wearing the blindfold but goes, I can see your shoes. Those are not the shoes of the leader of the Raven Raven Society, and makes his way all the way up to meeting the new head of the Raven Society, Dr. Frances Gaunt, who's a female leader. I think this might be a little reference to the now former British Prime Minister Theresa May, because she describes her ascent into this position as the leader of the Raven Society as, well, none of the men wanted it, so I had to stand up and take it, which is what it feels like when Theresa May talks about how she became the Prime Minister. Nobody wanted it. Every leader of every party, when there was the big vote in the UK, every leader of every party left their jobs and walked away, and she was the only person willing to stand up and take the beating that she got for the next 2 years as Prime Minister of that party, or Prime Minister of the UK. She was the only person willing to stand up, and that's what this character sounds like. That's what Dr. Frances Gaunt sounds like. She didn't particularly want to be leader. She wasn't on the path to it, but it sounds like she just had to stand up and take this position. So I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and Frances Gaunt is played by Anna Chancellor, who was in Four Weddings and a Funeral. She was Duckface from Four Weddings
That's
and a
who
Funeral.
she was.
And she was in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as well,
Yes.
with Alan Rickman.
Yes.
So, yeah, she's certainly a staple on UK television for sure. You know, she's done something like Downton Abbey. Now, it's not something I watch, but... and also, I remember her from Penny Dreadful as Claire Ives as well.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yes. The story kind of revolved around the Ives family, didn't it?
Yes, exactly.
In the show, so she's probably a pretty important character in there. But yes, all I remember her from is Duckface. Thanks for putting that out, John. I was trying to picture her face and why I knew it so well.
But I love how she comes across here. It's a very... just the intonation of what she talks about, it's almost like she's kind of scatty. She's talking about French doors and so on and all this. And why? But if you want a door, why would you put glass in it? Because that's a window. So why do a half window, half door? It's very odd to me. And she, she's talking along those lines, and then she goes, "And where did you say that you cut yourself on these French doors? Because I've been to a lot of houses around here, and there are no French doors."
Exactly.
She controls this hood.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
basically she knows, there are orangeries, there are porches, there are castles, there are pubs, all these different things, but she knows of no house that would have French doors in the village. So, there's a method to her madness, and I think the best line for me was where she offers Martha Kane tea. I always keep wanting to say Martha Wayne.
Oh, I know.
And because Kane sounds like Wayne, or rhymes with Kane, or Wayne, then, it's like...
Well, the official Pennyworth account did put out her photograph after this episode saying, "Is everybody enjoying seeing Martha Wayne in the show?" So it's not just us, it's everybody involved in the show. There's been quite a few little jokes going around from the people that are following the account, kind of going, even they can't get it right. We all know it's just going to be Martha Wayne. So this isn't the big surprise like Barbara Kane in Gotham eventually becoming Barbara Kane, the mother of Barbara Gordon. So it's not that big surprise. No. Everybody knows this is going to be the real mother of Bruce Wayne. So.
But just coming back to this bit of dialogue, she goes to Martha Kane, "Tea?" And she goes, "Herbal or Earl Grey?" And Martha Kane goes, "I'll have whatever you're having." And she just replies, "I'm having gin."
Absolutely.
Which is a great answer.
Absolutely. Martha, I'll stick with the tea, obviously. I do like that when Martha's trying to get out of the place as well, she's been given the injections and been treated as the doctor is treating her, as Dr. Gaunt is treating her, and then she realises that she's in a bit of a bad situation and asks for her clothes back, and Dr. Gaunt goes, no, I burnt your clothes. You're not getting out of here. You're going to die here, basically. So I really like that conversation. But I think this is one of the things that really comes from the scene. This leader is a very strong leader of the society, but what we realise as the whole scene plays out is the Raven Society think that Alfred and Martha are there as assassins to kill their new leader, like they killed Harwood, effectively. They believe that Lord Harwood was killed by the No Name Society. So what we're kind of learning here is that the Raven Society seem to think that the No Name Society are trying to physically, violently take all of them out, and potentially that's the whole setup from Detective Inspector Aziz and the ruling class. The Prime Minister and the ruling class are trying to pit these two organisations against each other so they'll take each other out. But that wasn't the mission for Alfred. It wasn't the mission for Martha. They were there just to find out the name of the new leader, which allows them to kind of escape and kind of get away with a little bit of a beating from Alfred, and a very smart moment from Martha, where he tells her to use all the training that she got when she was in college to take out the guys while he takes out everybody else and gets out of there. So pretty cool.
Exactly. And it's a good job as well, because you have that lovely macabre moment where Frances Gaunt asks the nurse to bring in Tanya, and then this jar with a head preserved in formaldehyde is there looking back at Martha, and Frances just goes, yeah, she tried to kill me as well, and she wouldn't give anything up, so it kept her head. And Tanya, we call her Tanya because she looks Russian.
Exactly.
And it's just...
She goes, do you know her? It's not a trick question, because none of us know her either. She wouldn't give us any information and now her head's in a jar. But we'd like to have her body buried, so if you could tell us who she is, we'll happily send it back to her family. It's a really good, really threatening situation.
It's wonderfully weird, this whole thing with Frances Gaunt, and I must say I loved it. And with the village,
yes,
definitely.
Exactly. Another great new character on the show. Really, really enjoyed seeing this. But that's kind of it from the Raven Society new leader. I'm really excited to see more of this character in the future. She's the new leader of their the new crew, effectively. As we said last episode, it was a really weird moment when you thought, has this society gone? The ones that are in the opening credits, are they gone now? No, they're not. There's another leader taking their place, so it's a very cool one. But let's get on to our third question, because there's one massive question that we've been leaving out since the beginning of the podcast. John?
Yes. Did they just kiss?
Yeah, they did.
They certainly did, yeah.
Really? Martha and Alfred have just kissed?
Interesting.
Yeah. Shocking.
Very interesting.
It was planted throughout the episode. You can definitely tell there's an attraction between the two of them, but I just thought it was really bizarre that the kiss would happen, because given that we had that whole conversation with Alfred going, he's just gotten engaged, and showing Esme's photograph to Martha. Is she using the traditional tricks in the Spy Master's book to get Alfred on board on the No Name Society? Is she using everything? You know, she's tried money, she's tried making him the hero. Is she now using the femme fatale abilities
well, that's it. Is
to
it
get her
just
on
a
board?
ruse with the femme fatale thing, or is there something meaningful behind this from Martha? I got the feeling that from Alfred, it was a moment thing, but then he did kind of pull away and kind of go, I've got to now get back to Esme. But like there was that sense there. So I wonder if he thought this was just a ruse, and whilst, you know, he was still kissing her and all that, it was because, well, her lips were where they were. I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things, you know, it's like, was there any meaning behind it? And it'll be interesting because, I mean, at this moment in time, her and Thomas Wayne certainly don't have anything. It may be a lonely existence as a field operative in a foreign country.
No explanation for Alfred there, though, John.
Yeah, and, you know, as I say, she has this really good connection with Alfred throughout the whole of this episode, you know, from the Scotch eggs at the bar in the Severed Arms, where Alfred's trying to explain to her what a Scotch egg is, to, you know, the chase scene and the rescue scene, as you say, all that kind of stuff, and sharing bits about her life and her father. So I wonder if it's just that, and really, at the end of the day, there's not too much to read into this. But obviously we'll need to see. It's
a bit massive, though, given that he works as her butler for at least the next 10 years.
Well, yeah, that would be certainly a little weird.
And possibly his best friend.
As I say, maybe Thomas and Martha, it's all a big front. The whole thing.
Maybe.
In the end, what's going to come out of this is that the Wayne family is a front for money for a left-wing organisation, the No Name League. And Alfred is their protector and bodyguard, who is going to be there to save them. Except he fails one night in an alley as they come back from the opera.
Interesting. Let's just make sure we say that the DC universe has multiple realities. Yes, so this could just be an alternate reality where Alfred has a relationship with Martha Wayne before Thomas Wayne does. So it doesn't necessarily mean, don't worry, doesn't necessarily mean they're rewriting 80 years of canon storytelling where Thomas and Martha Wayne never get together. This could just be completely alternate reality that we don't actually know what's going on at all in the future.
And Wayne Enterprises is trying to do good for society. It sees itself as a philanthropic commercial entity. So
Johnny with the big words this episode.
I know.
I love it. That is just probably one of the big questions from the episode. And I suppose my answer to the question is, it's a bit awkward, because of everything we think we know about what's going on with the characters, there's loads more to this show. We're only 4 episodes into a 10-episode season to begin with, and potentially 6 or 7 years of TV storytelling. So not going to read too much into this moment between the two of them. A little bit disappointed in Alfred, given that he's just gotten engaged to his girlfriend, who they're currently together, right? He hasn't broken up with her a 4th time, has he?
No.
I think by the end of the episode.
By the end of the episode, yeah. And I think ultimately that's possibly more the issue with the kiss at this moment, is that it's way too soon. And he's just gotten engaged to Esme, and you're just there kind of going, Alfred never seemed like that's the kind of thing he would do. He would always be this kind of moral, have a value on something as to whether you treat someone right or not. At least that comes from Gotham and so on. And maybe this is just that lapse that happens.
Or maybe this is where he learnt that lesson. That's one of the things, someone who's got great moral standing and great moral abilities later in life usually has gone through moments early in their life that taught them to be that way, and this may be a teaching moment. But it did seem like, oh, hang on a second, what's going on here? You've just spent 3 episodes setting up this relationship with the two of them, getting them ready to get married. Esme's been talking about the wedding with Alfred's parents, saying both of them need to get involved in the wedding planning and all that kind of stuff, and then suddenly you got this moment of the kiss. So that seemed like a big shock, but there's a bigger shock to come. But let's take a little detour after that question. On to another question. Up north again.
Bayek, lads, you smell gorgeous tonight.
Well, who would win in a battle of the Sykes sisters?
I think it would be a dead run, actually. I think it would be even Stevens, to be honest.
It's a great battle, though, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's the the cabin fever that obviously Bet has here, and I love the fact she's just, I'm sick of you and your clientele coming in here, with Lulu doing things, candlesticks being placed in places, areas where candlesticks shouldn't be placed, unless it's a temporary kind of candlestick holder, maybe.
Maybe.
But it's just the fight that they have was just really, really good. The radio to the face, and then Bet comes back with the tea towel around her head, and slams her into the wall. And finally, as siblings do, the older sister, Peggy, can't let that rest and does another attack on her sister as well. I just thought it was really, really nicely done.
It really is. And I also like, the idea, we've had this, we both have siblings, that moment, and probably it was me doing it, and probably John, I can imagine you doing it as well with your family. When you have control of the radio or the TV and people are annoying you, and you just turn the volume up, because that's effectively what's happening with Beth. She's listening to a song by Dusty Springfield, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in our notes. But she's listening to this song and she's really enjoying the song, but Peggy's telling her to be quiet because she's got a client in the house, and she just keeps turning the volume up on the radio, which is that moment where you're going, oh, you're really niggling at your sister here. You can really tell that the two of them are sisters. And I love how the whole thing ends as well, as Bet leaves the house to head back to London, and she's still a bit pissed off, really, about the fight between the two of them. And she goes, I'm going back to my friend Esme in London. And you see Peggy kind of going, it was just a fight, like.
Yeah, you're leaving? It was just a fight.
We just beat each other up and beat each other bloody for 10 minutes, but it was just a fight. We're still sisters, like,
Yeah. I must say, and the other thing as well, Bet goes, I know when I'm not wanted.
Yeah.
But I think this is something that the show gets really well. I think it nails, actually, is that kind of tit for tat slagging, if you want, between people. It's the sharp retort, always. It's the back and forth of insults that ultimately aren't meant in an insulting way. It's just kind of the way of describing the situation, and I think you get that here between Peggy and Bet, and you certainly get it with Alfred as well. With some of the things he says to Martha. I mean, I would imagine Martha, being American, would probably slap him for some of the things that he's been saying to her, because it's just kind of like really pointed on the nose, but it's kind of that affectionate slagging that you do.
Absolutely. Like, I love that moment early on when she's carrying the gun. He doesn't really put up a huge fight to her carrying the gun, given that was the relationship that they had the last episode, that she's not supposed to be carrying a gun. But he says, you got to watch yourself with that. And she goes, oh, the safety's on. And he goes, well, we used to have a good laugh at our mate Rog every time his name come up in conversations, because his last words were, the safety's on. real good slagging. I remember when I moved to America, and the first time I moved out there, my friends came over, were living with me for a while, and they both worked in a restaurant at nights. And they said that while they were working there, both Irish guys, both known each other since they were kids, because of the amount of ribbing that they gave each other, the amount of slagging that they gave each other, half of the staff that worked in the restaurant, mostly Americans, thought they hated each other, thought that neither of them liked each other. But they'd known each other at that stage for about 15 years. But they just constantly had a banter and a battle between the two of them that got a little bit excessive at times, I suppose. So I love that they've nailed this in the show. Now, no fisticuffs between the two of them at all. It wasn't like the Sykes sisters actually taking physical punching and violence to each other. But they said they were almost like the attraction for all of the staff to watch while they were working there at night. So I do like that in the show, definitely.
Yeah. Well, with that, on to our fifth and final case note. Who killed Esme Winnicus?
First off, Esme is dead. The fourth episode in. What a huge journey that's been crammed into these 4 episodes for Esme. Now, we did say that there are times that Esme as a character has not really worked on the show. I liked a lot of what was there in this episode, and no fault to the actress at all. It just feels like she was never compatible with Alfred, and I don't know why it went so fast. Other than to have this time to show why potentially Alfred never has another proper relationship after this.
Yeah, I mean, I actually really thought the whole thing with Esme staying at Alfred's parents was actually really good. I liked the interaction between her and Alfred's dad, and then bringing the mum in to organise the wedding. I thought that was really, really nicely done. And, I mean, that was a breakfast from hell that Esme had to sit through. I mean, kidneys? I don't think I've ever known kidneys for breakfast.
Really?
No, it goes in a steak and kidney pie. I mean, I love kidneys, but I wouldn't have them for breakfast.
Yeah, okay.
What next? Black Forest Gatto for dessert breakfast.
Is there no kidney in black pudding?
No, that's blood.
Okay, just blood pudding. Okay.
Listen, everyone, they are the wonderful treats of British cuisine. Blood sausage and fried kidneys.
Listen, because of Pennyworth, you got an entire plate full of Eccles cakes made by me this week to celebrate 2 episodes of Pennyworth. So at least there's also some great cuisine in the UK as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I was just there going, because it was like, breakfast from hell.
Kidneys. Maybe kippers.
I'd just sit with the cornflakes, to be honest.
Excellent.
But again, just coming back, I think, this is a really big moment for Alfred and obviously for Esme. And there's an element of mystery around it as well, given that we only see the killer's feet and then hands. But for sure, there's a lot of the lead up to this where the actions of Esme just don't really make sense.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's just trying to put someone in a certain place at a certain time, and it just kind of doesn't flow, because after being shown to be terrified to the extent where she has to stay with Alfred's parents whilst he's out of town, she then decides in the dead of night to go and paint flowers on the wall of an empty, isolated apartment.
Yeah.
And then gets killed for the trouble.
I know. I didn't really understand why she would leave the safety of her home, particularly when she's been told that Alfred may not be returning that night as well. She leaves a note for him, but we heard him on the phone earlier on going, I'll be back tonight or tomorrow, depending on how this job is going, effectively. But he doesn't talk to her again after that. So it does seem a little odd that she would leave the safety of the Pennyworth home. But he did tell her that she was very strong earlier on in the episode when we saw her cowering in the corner before he arrived into the house, he did tell her that she's strong enough to deal with this. She just needs to kind of get over the fear. So maybe that's all going to play in a future episode. Maybe they'll get a bit more of an explanation as to how badly this is going to affect Alfred, really. One of the things I did like in the episode, and this kind of where this point came from, the who killed Esme Winnicus, if you go through the episode, and we've seen it twice now, or 3 times actually there, there's quite a few good candidates set up for who could be the killer. It makes it a really good little murder mystery in here for the character of Esme.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, let's kind of go through the candidates, John. So, for me, the least likely person, but it is still a possibility, is it Martha Kane or a member of the No Name League that did it? You know, we hear that effectively at the beginning, Thomas Wayne, we hear him telling Martha, basically, under any circumstances, we want Alfred to be part of this group.
At any cost.
At any cost. And we also see that Martha's very interested in Esme, asks for her name and her photograph, basically. So we know that she's been shown a photograph of Esme.
Yeah.
Now, not casting aspersions on Martha already. She's only been on the show 2 episodes, but we don't know anything about her. She's very quiet about her past and very quiet about what's been going on, only releasing small bits of information to Alfred, not enough to really tell much about her character. I like her. I like the character, but we don't know anything about her at all. So it is a possibility that she took the opportunity to take out Esme.
Yeah, I mean,
not like a love triangle thing.
I think it's the least likely that it's Martha. I think one up would be that it's someone else from the No Name, because I think Alfred has just left Martha.
Yeah.
So she has to do a quick run to the apartment. So I think in Agatha Christie kind of style, that's probably definitely the least likely, and I'm glad it is, because I think then if her or the No Name League, or dare I say even Thomas Wayne, were responsible, that would make then that secret that they keep from him forever whilst he's their butler.
I can't imagine.
I just think that would be potentially just not a great kind of idea, to be honest.
Yeah, it'd be kind of ruinous to the relationship if they did that, definitely. I was just wondering if perhaps the information came from Martha Kane and somebody in the No Name League possibly acted on it, not on her orders or not on Thomas Wayne's orders. Somebody else got the information, and that's what caused the death of Esme, I suppose. Another possible as well is Detective Inspector Aziz. We hear him threatening Alfred early on in the episode in the nightclub that Alfred used to work at. I think he's now a patron there, is what it seems like, with the amount of money that he's making. I presume he's no longer working the doors of the club in Soho. But we have that conversation between D.I. Aziz and Alfred, where he says to him, does Esme know what you do? Does she know what you're working at? So he knows who Esme is. He knows all about her from the pilot episode. So you're wondering whether potentially this organisation, another organisation, the ruling class, I suppose we would probably call them, under the Prime Minister and under Detective Aziz, potentially they are trying to give a warning sign to Alfred to stop him working for the Ravens or for the No Name, to keep him back on track. Because you hear Alfred kind of questioning throughout the episode whether he's doing the right thing. Is it fair of him to hide this side of himself from Esme? So,
yeah, I mean, this is one of the, I think, even though it's possible, maybe not the most likely, it's the one I kind of want to be the case. I mean, certainly, at least from the shoes, it's probably more likely to be a man, but we don't know that for sure. It could be a woman wearing trousers, absolutely. And certainly, I think this, for me, would be really, really intriguing, because we've seen, Inspector Aziz, he's potentially being just the neutral copper who would work with Alfred. He's working for the Crown, as we've seen, and indeed he wants and is trying to recruit Alfred to them. So it's this battle between the No Name League and the Crown for Alfred's services, basically. And I think that's a really nice kind of point where this would tip Alfred into pledging his allegiance to the Crown and the Queen to work with Aziz.
Oh, his allegiance is to the Crown. She just doesn't pay as well as the rest
well,
of them.
That's true. Yeah, that was a good line.
I love that stuff, and I love the whole idea of Alfred kind of going, oh, we'll tell the Queen I like her as well. Just make sure that you say it respectfully to her.
Yeah.
really, really like that stuff. Another possible, John?
Yeah, is Peggy Sykes.
Maybe.
Maybe. It's certainly a long shot, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Beth has been talking about this woman, Esme, all the time. We don't know to what extent Peggy is annoyed that she's left and is looking out for her sister, possibly. And we do see Peggy try and strangle Beth Sykes in the fight.
Yes.
You know, as a real threat. And so it's just that motif of the hands around the neck that this could have been Peggy Sykes travelling down to effectively protect her sister from this other unknown woman, as far as she's concerned, in Esme.
Yeah.
And one that most likely got her into the position of almost being hung and killed. So is this the protective sister? We don't know. And certainly the hands clasped around the neck would suggest a familiarity which we've seen earlier in the episode with the fight between Peggy and Beth. So
yeah.
I think that's an interesting one for sure, because I really hope we see Peggy Sykes in the show for longer. I think, you know, she's really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. So it's possible that it's her. I think, though, most likely candidate, which means it's probably not going to be her. And the most likely candidate is probably Beth Sykes. We already know that she knows Esme's address. Now, she doesn't know the new address, though. This is the new apartment of Alfred and Esme. So she doesn't know the address, but she was definitely keeping tabs on her and definitely heading to London to meet up with Esme. If Beth Sykes didn't kill Esme, what do you think it's going to do to her to get to London and find out that somebody has murdered the person that she's going to meet up with?
And that's why, even though we've put her as the most likely, I think the story potentially is better where she isn't the one that killed her, but she is the one that's maybe more distraught about losing Esme than Alfred. And again, I think that's an important point. I don't think she knows where this new apartment is.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't know the times here, and maybe there's time jumps and so on, but that's not really explicitly made obvious here at all. Whereas I suspect that the good old detective inspector, as is, has been following her. You know, he's obviously knows about her. He's talked to Alfred about her, and so may have more of an idea that they have moved and this is the new address.
Absolutely. Or is this all just retaliation from the Raven Society for what they did up in the town? Is this all to do with backlash about them finding out about the new leader of the Raven Society? So loads of options. I actually really do like how this played in the episode. I know losing a major character and someone that we thought was actually going to be involved in the show for quite a long time. I know it's quite a big thing to have a major character dying in the 4th episode. I love how it plays in here. And particularly, I know that it's a trope, a TV trope, that killing off the girlfriend to give motivation to the main character. But I think when you have effectively an underground war going on, which is how it's described by Aziz at the beginning of the episode, you do have to have casualties or else it doesn't mean anything in a show like this. So unfortunately, it turns out to be the girlfriend being killed at the beginning of the series to give the motivation. But we always knew that Alfred is being a bachelor into his 80s and 90s. You know, he really doesn't have a huge amount of relationships over the years. So we always knew that about the character. So this always seemed like a doomed relationship from the start, I suppose.
Yeah.
So sad to see it go this way, but I think it is a really intriguing point and hopefully a great jumping off point for the show.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I think on to some notes.
Yeah.
Derek, have you got any notes for this episode?
A couple of notes. I loved some of the lines in the episode. I loved when Martha and Alfred are talking in the tea rooms and Martha goes, "So when the shit hits the fan, what should I do?" And Alfred blankly says to her, "Turn off the fan, I suppose, or stand behind something shitproof." Just great little lines. He's always had this deadpan sense of humour. This Alfred, all the Alfreds have always had that deadpan sense of humour, and I think it plays out quite well here. Some interesting ones. The background on the TV, when Mr. Pennyworth is sitting with Esme, and you hear on the news about German Chancellor Braun talking about the German Reich and its existence and bringing in Holland, I think it is. They're going to bring in
Netherlands.
They're going to bring them into the Reich. So it seems like in this version of the DC universe in London, it seems like there's been a different outcome to the war, possibly.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, so that's very interesting because obviously it plays into Alfred and his group of boys, you know, they could still be fighting that World War II. That could have still been going on for these, 15, 20 years after World War II ended in our universe, that this World War could still be going on. So that's quite interesting. That adds a little twist to the universe.
Yeah, we have another great sort of deadpan line. We have Detective Aziz asking Alfred to join, with him, with the government, and that he could command an army. And Alfie points at the erotic dancer saying, that dancer over there could invade Russia all on her own. Me, I won't be commanding anyone anytime.
Yes, absolutely. He kind of wants to be in between the cracks and make all the money. I do love that little line about the dancer. That's really, really good. One I just wanted to point out about the Dusty Springfield song. Dusty Springfield is probably very well known as a lesbian singer from the 60s. She's very well known and eventually was very much out about her long-term relationship with her partner. I just like that Bette is so attracted by the song. It just says a lot about Bette Sykes' character in this show to be so attracted to the Dusty Springfield song.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good music choice. If you watch 5 seasons of Gotham, particularly the first 2 or 3 seasons where they had a huge amount of budget that they could spend on copyrighted music, you absolutely could tell when they added in songs to the show, they were always really interesting, really different, and there was always a reason behind them, even naming a lot of the episodes after songs as well over the years. So so when you hear a good song on the show, there's usually a good reason it's in there, and I think choosing to have Dusty Springfield represent the personality of Bette Sykes is great. And as well, at the end of the episode, as Alfred is running towards the body of Esme, or what he thinks is something bad's gone on in his apartment, is a second Dusty Springfield song as well, which makes me think it's Bette Sykes.
Okay, good call. Yeah,
there you go. And one final one: Cliff Richard and the Shadows. Every granddad's favourite band. They broke up in 1968. The show is set in roughly 1963. So the announcement on the television that Cliff Richard and the Shadows have broken up is 5 years too early. But what's interesting about it is they say the Minister for Culture couldn't be reached for comment. So I think it's quite interesting because it does, again, give another layer to the society that's going on in the UK in this version of London in the DC Comics. Because would you ask, when Take That broke up in the 90s, would you ask the Minister for Culture for a comment on them breaking up? So I like this idea that you wouldn't really go to a minister to talk about it, but is there something very different in this world?
But I'm just wondering, was Lord Harwood, he was a minister, was he Minister for Culture? I can't remember now.
Wow, John. That's just throwing me right there.
Yeah, we'll have to come back to you in next episode.
I like that. Yeah. See, this is what happens when you record 2 episodes in a week. Loads of stuff could happen that you're not aware of. Finally, because we always do a little Pennyworth phrase, John, can we talk about who is Gordon Bennett?
I think we can.
I think we have to, because we grew up in the 70s, 80s and 90s. There was a TV show called Only Fools and Horses, which everybody knows in the UK. They use this phrase, Gordon Bennett, all the time, and it's only when Martha Wayne looks at Alfred and goes, "Who's Gordon Bennett? Why are you saying that? Why is that coming?" that we actually looked up who this character of Gordon Bennett was. It's quite an interesting one, and I think they know the origin of this phrase on the show. I think Bruno Heller is putting this in as a little nod for people that do know. So now you're going to know what it means. Gordon Bennett was a socialite in New York. His father ran the New York Post. He took over in that position after his father gave up the position. But he was a socialite who had a huge purse of wealth, purse of monies, effectively, that he used to effectively drink and socialise and kind of embarrass himself quite a lot. He would spend a lot of money on women, a lot of money on going out and partying. And I think the reason why it's used in here, so effectively, you would use the actual phrase Gordon Bennett when you heard a shocking, very surprising, or maybe unbelievable story. You'd go, Gordon Bennett, as in, what's he done this time, kind of thing. That's where the phrase came from. But I think the reason why they used this specifically and had Martha Wayne go, "Who's that?" is because it sounds very similar to that persona that Bruce Wayne adopts when he wants to prove that he's not Batman. The idea of throwing lots of cash around and being a bit of a pariah on the upper class society of Gotham. This idea that Bruce Wayne has all the money in the world, but he's a little bit uncouth, a little bit not society bound. He'll do whatever he wants to because he has the money to do it. That's kind of what Gordon Bennett was like. So I like the touch. A little bit of history, a little bit of interesting story there from this one line of the show. So some good stuff going on this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Yeah.
Overall, John, we're at that point. How would you rate Pennyworth, episode 4, Lady Penelope?
I would give this 4 Scotch eggs out of 5.
Right.
For me, this is my favourite episode so far. I absolutely loved Peggy and Bet's interaction and the fight. It just, warring sisters. Mm-hmm. It was so good. And I loved the vibe of the village and with Martha and Alfred investigating. It was creepy. It was Wicker Man-esque. It had weird maypole dancers. I thought that Frances Gaunt was absolutely fantastic as this sort of slightly off-centre, slightly kooky leader of the Raven Society. Mm-hmm. Plus, we have this huge moment of Martha and Alfred kissing. Will that go anywhere? Will it not? Let's find out. Yep. We have Esme's death. Who killed her? Let's get sort of all Poirot on this because, it has that vibe. It's almost like, Death on the Nile or something like that. Who has done this? I'm really intrigued. It's a shame that Esme is gone, but I do feel that her story was probably done way too rapidly. Yeah. And it was just a little bit like a roller coaster ride of it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, or it's engaged, kissing Martha, off, dead. And I think that's a shame. I think this could have made a lot more sense to give something to Alfred's character that we know about from him being Bruce Wayne's butler, and that confidant and effectively right-hand man at Wayne Manor. So maybe there will be someone else who, could also impact that. Maybe it's Martha, who knows? But there's a lot of intrigue here, and I really liked it. It's both a shame that Esme is gone, but I think also if her character was going to be written the way that it had been so far, well then it might be time that she did leave the series, because it was a little bit too sort of blowing in the wind, really. It felt a bit for me. You just didn't quite know which direction this character was going in. Yeah. And by that, I also mean with Alfred, not just with herself. It just seemed way too strange for me, and some of the choices were a little weird. But still, the impact of her death, and in this episode, her moments were really good. So I think there's a huge amount in here that is really, really excellent stuff. Yeah. And you could argue I should make this a little higher, but I'm going to give it 4 Scotch eggs out of 5. I was going to, Scotch eggs is the big thing, isn't it? You have to have the full Scotch egg. You can't have half a Scotch egg, basically. You have to have the full thing. So I do love Alfred's line explaining that, it's an egg inside of a sausage, inside of breadcrumbs. I have no idea how to do it. Let's get on to some feedback for this episode, onto our Royal Mail section.
Before you go, be a love. Put stamps on them. Pop them in a letterbox for me.
I can't do that.
You can.
Patrick Lemke over on our Facebook page says, loved Thomas Wayne's line about Gotham 20 years later. Gotham will be safe, he says, until he ends up in that alleyway.
Absolutely.
A great callback in this episode, having a father, a mother, and their son walking a back alley in London down past Lord Harwood, who tries to ask them for some money, and they beat him back and run away. That is definitely a callback to the final fate of the Waynes,
definitely.
Isn't it? Yeah, really, really good touch. Over on Twitter, Amon Creates says, here's my big Pennyworth speculation. Alfred was Bruce Wayne's real father all along. The No Name League had set up Thomas and Martha's marriage with him as their butler as some deep cover-up.
Interesting, yes.
That's massive. That's a massive theory. I'm not sure whether they'll change the entire DC universe by making Thomas no longer Bruce's father, just a work colleague of Martha, and covering up the relationship of Alfred as being the father of Bruce. It would change everything, wouldn't it?
But again, I think, we've said, is this thing part of a cover? As I say, will Wayne Enterprises be a subversive left-wing organisation cloaked in corporate capitalism in order to spread the wealth amongst Gotham?
I think I'd accept that. I think I'd be perfectly happy with that. And again, I'd be perfectly happy if it turned out that this show was going to be Thomas and Alfred occasionally teaming up with Martha, travelling around the world fighting crimes. I think that would be just as good if the whole cover is actually wealthy businessman Thomas Wayne or Dr. Thomas Wayne and his butler Alfred travelling around the world, but actually the two of them are fighting crime. I think that would be a fun little twist of the show, but I'm not sure whether they changed all of Batman history and said that Alfred's the father of Bruce Wayne and that he felt compelled to take care of Bruce because he's his real father after Thomas and Martha died. It would change Batman as a single entity. Why is he avenging his parents when actually one of his parents has been taking care of him for 30 years?
Yeah. Well, there is that suggestion.
But I like it. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us over our Twitter account. We're using both Gotham TV Podcast and TV Pod Industries. Ammon Creates shared it on our Twitter handle for Gotham TV Podcast. We're still active on both of them, so definitely share your thoughts over on Twitter as well. John, do you want to take the last bit of feedback?
Yeah, our final bit of feedback is from Teresa. Hey guys, I hope you had a fun weekend. I just watched episode 4 of Pennyworth. Holy moly, this is getting complicated. It's great. First off, the foreshadowing of Bruce Wayne's future with the couple and the little boy. I was very glad that they weren't attacked. I think that would have been too much. I'm wondering who the man was that approached the crying homeless man. Can't wait to find out. Esme, no. I have a feeling, because of the conversation Alfred had with the inspector, that he either killed Esme or had her killed. How awful of a way for Alfred to find out. Mm-hmm. I was hoping Alfred and Martha wouldn't take things too far. He would have regretted being so in love with Esme. But after Esme was killed, I wondered if, in this version, Bruce would end up being Alfred's son.
Wow.
And that's why the Waynes, maybe with Martha's direction, made Alfred his guardian if anything should happen to them. I love shows that make you think all kinds of things. Will Alfred give in and work for the Queen? I think so. I'm really looking forward to your episode 3 podcast. I have some catching up to do. Have a terrific week. Yeah, thank you so much, Teresa. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, that one kiss can mean so much and get all the nerve endings firing in the brain as to which way this could go. And, it's certainly happening, and it is a great talking point. You've taken a character like Alfred, where the backstory has been incomplete, and all of a sudden, all these new possibilities of stories and story arcs are coming in. And I think that is the great thing about the Pennyworth show, is that, what Danny Cannon and the showrunner Bruno Heller have done is taken a character that was beloved in their Gotham run and are really exploring this character in his younger self. And it allows for all these lovely theories to come bubbling up to the surface. I must say, I'm also just coming to Esme. I wish she hadn't really been killed here. I wish there had been a bit more time, or maybe I should say that the arc that her and Alfred travelled on had been taken over a longer set of the episodes for this series.
In fairness, as I said last episode, because the arc was so short in that even one episode they broke up twice and they had all the conversations going on, it made me dislike her character and not care as much as I should that this has happened in this episode, I suppose. I think that's more of what I feel. These 3 episodes have had so much just drama after drama after drama that wasn't necessary, that it made me dislike Esme more than anything else, rather than me feeling really sad that Alfred's lost her, which I should be feeling in this episode. I'm kind of going, okay, well, that story's done with, and it's a really intriguing idea as to who killed her is now more intriguing to me than anything that was going on in those first couple of episodes, unfortunately. And I hate to say that. I hate when things aren't going the way that I want them to go in shows, but I kind of do like this impetus now where we have a big investigation going on. Who murdered Esme Wilkins?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm totally with you. I definitely feel it is the inspector. Dare I say it? An inspector called.
Absolutely.
And then killed her.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very intrigued by that as well. And Teresa, we did talk about it earlier on. The homeless man in the street is not just any old homeless man. That's that is Harwood, and that's how far he's fallen from being the leader of the Raven Society to being on the street and effectively turning into the pet of a homeless kid. You probably noticed that the second time you watched the episode, there was so much going on, and if you watch these episodes back to back, episode 3 and episode 4, there may be little things that you missed in the episode, but it certainly made you think. Loads of stuff going on in here. Thanks so much for emailing us your feedback. If you want to email us your feedback or your thoughts on any of the episodes of Pennyworth as they're airing, you can email us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone for your feedback on this episode. It's really, really appreciated.
Yeah.
Some good theories out there. I'm liking it a lot.
Absolutely. We're building up in this show. There's so much going on. We've still got quite a few episodes left in the show, and I think now if it settles into this weekly pace from now on, we're going to start getting more and more theories out of it. So really excited to see any of your thoughts as we go on. As we always say over on TV Podcast Industries, if you're enjoying the podcast, share it. Share it with friends. Share it with people that are into these shows. Share it with other people that might enjoy listening to our podcast and our thoughts, and might enjoy interacting with us and telling us what their thoughts and their theories about the show is. It's a small niche show at the moment, remember. It's on a very small network in the US, so it's not got a huge audience. So tell them about our podcast and tell them maybe they want to find a podcast that talks about the show like they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Governors, for joining us for episode 4. We'll be back very soon with our review of Pennyworth episode 5, entitled Shirley Bassey.
Oh, yes. There's got to be a Bond theme tune in there, right?
Oh, it's a bit Goldfingery to me.
Maybe, but we'll find out on Sunday. We'll see the 5th episode of Pennyworth. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Thank you so much, Governors, for joining us. As always, it's a pleasure speaking with you. I'm off to Boston Wassett to the Darkness Tea Room. They have the best baps in the village.
I saw that in the sign too. That's hilarious.
But I'll probably just grab a gin.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.